Okay, cool. All right, awesome. So you guys are in Midwest meets Middle East, targeted security program tips for an evolving cyber battlefield. If not, unfortunately, you're in the wrong talk, but it's too late now, so you have to stay till the end. We're going to roll through these slides. Basically, like I created this presentation. I came back. I'll get into my bio very briefly, but I came back from Iraq in 22. Deployed with a special operations unit. I'm still a member of the reserve, still in that same unit. Been in cybersecurity a while, but I picked up some really cool tips along the way that I saw these cool guys with long hair and beards with hands in their pockets all the time that I was attached to and working with all the time, doing all these interesting things that applied to cybersecurity. So I wanted to create a presentation to say, okay, these are some of the things that I picked up, working with these guys, being in this community for a while that also relate to cybersecurity that we can, share and learn from and get better. So I've got a really brief agenda. So we'll go over an introduction. I'll talk about the 3 roles of special operations with an IR twist. Talk about building networks. The war stories are going to be super short because we don't really have that much time. Normally I go in a little bit more in depth, talk about communication, imposter syndrome, key terrain, some compliance programs, tips and tricks, and questions. So this is typically like an hour presentation. I'm trying to cram it into like 20-ish minutes. So we've got some space for questions at the end. But this is me. So my name is Nick Oles. If you don't know that, now you do. You guys can follow me on LinkedIn. That's the only social media platform that I use. I try and post pretty regularly. You can message me there, get a hold of me, whatever. I wrote a book on phishing. There's a copy of it right there. It's available on Amazon. It dropped last year. But in a nutshell, myself, I talked about this briefly. I've got 15 years in IT and cybersecurity. Started out with like a traditional IT background, did some help desk, networking, security work. Then I got an incident response, defensive, offensive, kind of the whole realm. And then I started doing more speaking. I wrote a book. I do some consulting now, and I'm still, a member of the military, still working full time and kind of doing that. But my core has always been incident response, defensive focused. I've responded to, incidents and email, phishing attacks all over the world, basically throughout my entire career. That's kind of what led me to this book. Is I didn't really have a centralized location to have all these tools and processes in place. Me being a military guy, like I was always looking for like an SOP or a process or a policy of how we can grab an email and look at all these suspicious indicators, run them through with tools, and then make a determination at the end. Couldn't find it anywhere, so thought I would write a book, put that off for about like 6 years, and then actually just wrote the book. So this dropped in 22, so we're about a year, or no, this dropped in 23. I'm sorry, I wrote it in 22, published in 23. We're just about a year and a half into it or not. I've been in the military basically since I started working in IT, started as a commo guy, transitioned over to cyber, and then I've been in special operations as a support personnel for the last almost 5 years. A couple certifications. My background is I started in accounting and switched to cyber. Bunch of training in various capacities, so military, civilian, industry-wide training in cybersecurity. So it's just a picture of me and some of my buddies from the last tour. I had a mustache. I got rid of the mustache. Now, if you can see me, I don't have any more mustache, but that was kind of a joke my team did. And this is me working with some of the guys overseas. But so there's 3 rules of this is kind of like 3 rules of special operations, kind of 3 rules of just like the military in general. I don't know. That was never in the Marines, so I don't know if you guys had this one, but like it's always like revolves around this. Like always look cool, never get lost. If you get lost, look cool. We'll go into one of these, we'll go into each one of these in depth as we talk through it. But I heard this a lot, heard it a lot in the community, still hear it a lot. I'm curious, have you guys ever heard these 3 rules before? Or is it just a Nick thing in the Army? Maybe. Yes, no, heard them before. Cool. I love it. Okay. So I basically took these and I applied them to, like how we could be better in cybersecurity and be better as a person and be better in individuals, the things that I saw, these very successful tier 1 operators and how they carried themselves and did things and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, these are things that anyone can do. And these are things that could help us from an incident response or defensive cybersecurity way. So always looking cool. When you get around these guys, like they always dress in the nice stuff. They have the coolest gear. They take care of themselves very well. But, when I take a step back and I think of like what we do as like cybersecurity professionals and stuff, it's very, very easy to get like burned out and to get run down and to get frustrated and stuff like that. And kind of like a resilient thing that I looked at and I talked to some of, my friends now and some of my guys in the community and stuff. And it was like to do something you love every single day. That could be like playing a video game, reading a book, walking, writing, working out, running, laying in your bed for longer than normal, like whatever that is, but it's a good way to like mentally reset and to stay sharp and to take care of yourself. Also like physical fitness, I know we like harp on that in the military, but when you get out, like you still have to do it no matter what. So like it's good to keep you mentally sharp, keep you active, keep you healthy, you feel better, you look better, you do better in everything. Just like being an overall good person. Like a lot of these guys, I think of like my former bosses and my current boss and stuff like that in the military, like they're just like honest, good dudes. Like they work hard. They will do whatever they can to help you out. They'll give you the autonomy to do what you need to do. But if there's consequences and stuff, like they're going to be swift and strict and enforce that. And that's something I've picked up and hopefully carry on with me where I go. Dressing well, that's another thing I talked about, clothing. Like the way that you dress when you go into work, especially if you're in an office, like people are going to treat you differently. So if you don't think so, like go to work one day in sweatpants and see how people talk to you. Go to work the next day in like a suit and tie. And people are just going to like look at you differently. So keep that in mind as you're, I know a lot of people are remote now or hybrid and that changes the game a little bit, but still just keep that in mind as, yeah, people ask about where the interview is. So the second one, never get lost. So this is kind of like I'm an officer. This is like an officer joke too. Like it's super important to like know where you're going and to not get lost along the way, but it's going to happen eventually. So like have a plan in place. And when I talk about incident response and business continuity and disaster recovery and stuff, like no, things are going to go wrong. Like you could have the best plan in the world. And just like in the military, like once you start doing it, like you're going to get socked in the face or something's going to break or someone's going to forget something. You need to have like a backup plan for when things go awry because they're going to. So I've seen this in like incident response measures and exercises and stuff like that, where everything's stored on, a server. That's awesome. It's great. We always have access to it until we don't. And it's like, man, if we just printed hard copies of our, incident response book or some of our policies, that would cost us like, I don't know, 50 cents and it would save us a huge headache. So doing stuff like that, like it's great, it's on the server, but now we have a backup of it, printed out that if there's an emergency, we can grab it and go to an offsite and work. Or if all of our computers are down, we have a copy of it. I talked about anticipating, adjusting your plans. Like everyone uses email to communicate. What if your email's down? It's like really tough to communicate with all your coworkers when all you have is, your corporate email addresses. So like I've worked instances before, we set up burner phones, burner email addresses, because we thought our mail environment was compromised. The email addresses were super easy and that could have been done ahead of time and saved us some headache, but we did it the hard way. The other thing, train as you fight. Like that's a big military thing. Like when you're going to do these exercises and tabletops and purple teams and stuff like that, like do the things that you're actually going to do. If you're going to say you're going to reset accounts, reset accounts. If you're going to delete things, delete things. Because when it comes time to do the incident, you're going to find things like, or in an incident, you're going to find, oh, this is interesting. We didn't think of X, Y, and Z. We can't do that. And now you go like, man, we did all this training and, we still have a lot of details to flesh out. So rule 3, if you get lost, cool. So, officers, we never get lost. And if we do, we probably lie and say we weren't lost and stuff like that. Being in super stressful environments. And if you guys were deployed or went to crazy exercises or did anything like high stakes in the military, like I noticed like being in a deployed environment, like when things were getting crazy, like I looked around the room and I kind of like would get a gauge of like who's freaking out, who's very nervous, who's lost control and stuff like that. Those are the people I don't want to be by. I want to be by the people that are like cool, calm, collective, like seem like they know what's going on. So like, in my opinion, and this is carried over into like incident response and ransomware cases and stuff like that, like confidence breeds confidence. So anxiety breeds anxiety. Like, so if I'm, high stress and I can't hold my thoughts and I can't stay organized, like it's going to make other people in my environment nervous and anxious and stuff like that. If I'm confident, cool, collective, like it's going to help other people in most cases. And I want to be by those people. If you do get lost, because it's going to happen, you do hit some adversity, get back to a point of reference, like find somewhere that that you can stop, take a knee, take a break, go for a walk, come back, drink some water, whatever that is, and then go back on your path again. Like it's cool, you got lost, but like you don't always have to be lost. You can find your way through this, get to the other side, find an alternate route, things like that. Airline pilots are one of my favorite examples of that. So like when an airline pilot gets on, they say, hey, we're going to hit some turbulence, like everyone be calm and stuff. And like people that fly a lot, they don't care. They're just like, all right, whatever. And then there's people that don't fly a lot, they get like super nervous. And like the pilots are always calm unless they need to be, like raising their voice or there's like a heightened threat or something like that. So they stay really calm, they stay really cool, they stay collective. And then if you're getting like a lot of turbulence, they'll just get on, they'll be really short and be like, hey, everyone return to your seats. We're going through turbulence. And the tone's a little bit different. People listen. And it's like, you kind of want to be, in my opinion, like the airline pilot, like calm when you need to be calm. When it's time to be, elevated, you should be elevated in control in the right manner. So building networks, this is another huge part. Human networks are built before a crisis or conflict occurs. So this is exactly the same thing in the military, like if you're using intelligence operations and you've got human sources and things like that, like you can't just go into a country or an environment and just snap your fingers and have, trusted sources. Like they take time, they take development, they take vetting, and it's not like a quick process. Incident response and professional networking is the same way. If you just go into an environment, an incident, or a geographic location or an organization, you're just like, hey, I'm just going to start reaching out to people. Like people aren't going to help you. It's going to get a little bit hectic, and you've got to kind of like build trust over time. And the only way you do that is like you give some information to people, some trusted information. They give you some trusted information back, and more, you start to trust these people more and more. Like if you think about like you go into a coffee shop or something. When you go into a new coffee shop, you say hi. If you're doing this regularly, you talk about the weather, you talk about little things here and there. And then maybe eventually you strike a conversation with a person. You're like, oh, do you like this football team? Or do you like this sports team? Or do you have kids? Do you like to run or whatever? They start sharing some information about them. You start sharing information about you. And then, you have a point of reference and you keep going and you keep going. And then eventually like they share something more sensitive, you share something more sensitive, or you go your separate ways. But like, that's the only way to do that. I've seen this work really well in, professional organizations. Like VetSec is an awesome one. I actually met Chris through this last year. Like reach out to these people, make contact, try and set up calls with them, share information with them, find people that do things very well that you're trying to get better at. Like my example of this, like I was in an ISAC, that's an information sharing analysis center. I knew nothing about malware reverse engineering. I made friends with someone that did, talked to them pretty regularly. And then one time we had a really nasty piece of malware, reached out to them, they analyzed it, sent me the report, and I was able to share that with my team. So huge win. I'm not going to be able to go into this war story too much, but this is a really cool tool. It's called DNS Twister, and you can use it to take a look at, your domain, see permutations, see where they're registered, see what country they're in. I had a really cool incident with this where we ran it through. We saw a bunch of foreign permutations of our domain registered in countries that we didn't operate in. We set out a really simple rule to alert us if any emails came into our organization using these permutations. So like here, we've got Raytheon with 2 R's. We were trying to see, is anyone trying to impersonate our brand and contact some of our individuals, as a position of authority or trust. And what had happened was someone was impersonating the CFO, contacted the finance department and said, hey, process this payment. We were able to alert on it and, stop that activity really quickly. So communication, one of the things that I really value and I've seen in really great leaders that I've worked for before is clear, concise communication. And I stole this quote from Mark Twain. I didn't really say this, but it's kind of a joke. If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. So it's like, no one really loves a wall of text. No one loves like a really long, super in-depth speech. Like less is more, more is less, be concise. In the IT security realm, like thanking your users if they report suspicious emails or they bring something up to you is very valuable. Like that can help a lot. And then also, as emerging threats come through, like as the new Linux cups vulnerability or Heartbleed or NotPetya, whatever you want to call out is like the newest thing, like communicating that with your users and saying like, hey, we saw this, we're looking at it, we're on it. If you have questions, let us know. We'll reach out if we need anything from you. And then your security, your IT or your organization are like, oh man, the security team, they're on it. We're not just hearing from them when it's a bad thing, when it's an incident, when there's ransomware, or when someone clicked a link. It's like we're hearing through them periodically. I'm not going to be able to get to this for sake of time, but NotPetya had a really cool networking story. I was able to gain, a lot of information from a lot of people just from, personal and professional relationships, texting people, following Twitter, and working through that on our incident response. But just know, like kind of hit on this in the networking thing, like you've got to build these networks out before crisis or conflict, not in it. You should be refining them and continuing to grow and build them. During the conflict is not the time to be trying to making a bunch of sources and get information from people. Imposter syndrome. So this is near and dear to my heart. I think everyone in this field, everyone exiting the military and stuff like that, you're going to encounter imposter syndrome. I think it's actually a good thing to have periodically if you not experiencing this, every couple of years or so, you're probably in a stagnant state, unfortunately. Just know it's normal. You should experience imposter syndrome every once in a while. You should be reaching a little bit out of your comfort zone, getting those positions, getting those roles, getting put in positions of responsibility. And just keep in mind, like someone thought you could do this job. Chances are you can. As I've like progressed in the military and professionally, like I would always look up when I first got in the military, I'd see like captains and majors, and I was like, man, they know how to do everything. They have so much experience and they know how things work. And then I became a captain and a major, and I was like, dude, they're just figuring it out as they go, just like everyone else. And I'm sure like enlisted people are the same way. I've heard it like E6, 7, 8. They're like, oh man, you think like you just flip the switch and you know everything, and yeah, fake it till you make it, exactly. And you just get there and you're like, everyone's just doing the best thing they can to try and make it through. So key terrain, we'll talk very briefly about this. But on the military side, like I learned about this, doing regular, like conventional ground stuff, but it translates very well into cybersecurity. And it's just like in a conventional force, key terrain affords a marked advantage to either combatant. So when we think of like a land conflict, we're going to think of like a bridge, a tower, a hilltop, things like that. Like whoever controls that has a better chance of attacking or defending an identified area. Cybersecurity is the same exact thing. You've got pieces of equipment in your environment, in your business, that are key terrain. If you control those, it's a lot easier for you to defend that network. If an attacker controls them, it's really, really hard for you to defend your network. It's also hard for you to operate your business, things like that. So I would think of things like a critical router, a server that's got all your intellectual property on it, or all of your sensitive files, maybe a piece of equipment that does all of your production. Maybe you're making toys or making computer chips or something like that. If that system goes down, you're not able to operate. But the key point is, just like in land conflict, you need to protect these assets differently. So you've got to put additional gates, guards, guns, whatever that is on the cybersecurity world, like additional technical controls, logging, alerting, things like that to protect these better. We're not going to really talk about this too much because we're running out of time a little bit, but just know, there's different models for security awareness. Security awareness is just how we're teaching people to get better in cybersecurity. We want their activity to change and help manage risk and align with the culture. There are things, I stole this from SANS. It's a really cool training opportunity. I think someone shared in my last session that there's like a scholarship for vets to take SANS classes for free. I'll have to dig into that and share something about it. But just know that there's compliance-based programs. These compliance programs set a bare minimum of expectations. They should be a starting point, but you should be striving to, improve that and advance your cybersecurity program and teaching your people. But the end result is for it to change behavior that helps you manage risk. You want them to act in the behavior that aligns with your culture. Awesome, Curtis. Thanks for sharing that. So we talked a little bit about phishing, but like near and dear to my heart, again, I wrote a book about it. There's really only 3 actions in phishing: clicking a link, interacting with an attachment, or providing sensitive information. It can come in many forms, but really a threat actor is trying to deceive an individual to take a specific action. This is one thing I want to cover really quick. So this is one of my tips that I've been pushing a lot lately to try and fix security awareness issues. So if you're doing security awareness, you're working in a program, like the simulated phishing messages, or you guys were in the military, so like the cyber awareness challenge and stuff that we had to do every single year, like that's awesome. It's great. It meets a compliance need, but it doesn't really teach what's going on in your organization. It's not specific to it. So I recommend getting like some really awesome donuts from a local bakery, talking to your IT security team and saying, hey, can you give me a list of reported phishing emails that have either worked or haven't worked or something in between? We're going to go ahead and throw those up on a screen, get everyone in a classroom together. Once we've got everyone in this classroom together, we can then review these phishing emails collectively as a team. It forces everyone to kind of get together, talk through it, and you can identify things. I actually have like an example up here of it. So like, hey, we can train people on all the things that we should be doing, like looking at the subject, the sender, the greeting, the body, links and attachments, and then have them collectively look out and say, hey, this is what I would think is suspicious. And then you call it out and you talk through it. This way the people are working together. Agreed, phishing emails are getting crazy good. AI is helping out with, the language is improving. The graphics and the images are getting better for impersonating organizations and companies. They're able to gather credentials from previous breaches and share those. And now there's QR code phishing and all that kind of crazy stuff. Okay, cool. So we can end on this. These are my like 4 big tips if you learn nothing else. If someone's like, hey, what can I focus on to improve my program or the posture of my organization? So my first thing is patching. So come up with a good patching process that's going to evaluate, the business impact. We talked about this, like look at your key terrain, things like that. Knowing your assets, so do like a good asset inventory. Just understand what you have, where you have it, and then you can evaluate, threats as they come up. Getting good policies, and then training users on phishing, all super important. So again, really quick, this is me on LinkedIn. If you've got LinkedIn, shoot me a request. Happy to connect. And I'm trying to put out content on there pretty regularly. Love to collaborate and chat. I love working with veterans. I'm still, in the military myself, but also a veteran. I've got my email here. You can shoot me a message. I do some consulting on the side. So if you've got a small, medium business or something like that, that could use some help, security awareness training, program development, maturity, threat intel, anything like that. Happy to chat more about that. We've got 2 minutes. So if you've got questions, anyone have anything? Yeah, then a Defender is the company that I do my consulting under. So I do some vCISO work for some SMBs, some small, medium businesses. One of my biggest clients is an MSP, a managed service provider. So that gives me access to a bunch of different, small businesses that they do the IT for. Really, really cool stuff. Key terrain slides, simply referring to the most valuable assets in the business environment. Yeah, it's gonna be what, there's kind of two ways to look at this. It could be the most valuable assets in your business process, but it also could be from your defensive side in cybersecurity, like what do I need to defend to keep control of this network? So it depends on what your organization is and how you want to, break that up. For me, like if I'm managing the cybersecurity program, like I want key stuff that's going to enable us to continue defending the network. So things like our logging services, our SIM, our antivirus, our backups are going to be really critical, things like that. Would that slide also consider money generating internet facing resources? Yeah, it could be. So it could be like if you've got a website with your product information that you also have a Shopify or some sort of store on. Absolutely, it could be. I just worked with a client actually that was a consulting firm that their website had a vulnerability in it. The attackers had uploaded malware to it. And because of that, their domain got blacklisted and they couldn't send email. So we had to work with them to get the malware removed, get their site recategorized, and then all the major vendors changed their categorization from bad to good so they could send email out. So the stash, oh, that's a great question, man. I don't know, that was something I picked up in Iraq and I brought it back for a little bit and I just got rid of it probably about a month ago. My daughter was devastated. She's like 4 and she was a huge fan. So I don't know. We'll see if it's going to come back or not. It's a pain to keep, man. It's really just a simplicity thing. It's easier just to shave your whole face. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Shoot me a request. If you like this, please consider making a post about it or something and spreading the word so we can get more vets involved and we can help everyone else out. Thanks, guys.